Good morning, friends. Welcome to another news update on the war. US and Israel have launched massive strikes against Iran. Explosions are rocking multiple cities, and the Ayatollah regime is under threat. Is this the end of Tehran? US and Israel have launched what their leaders call a coordinated large-scale strike aimed at toppling Iran's Ayatollah-led regime. Explosions have been reported across Tehran and other cities. Key defense and nuclear-related sites are being targeted, and both capitals have released statements framing this as an operation with regime change intent. According to official briefings released in the last hours, strikes occurred overnight in multiple Iranian population centers. At least one facility linked to Iran's defense and intelligence apparatus was hit, and the United States and Israeli leaders described the campaign as decisive in its objectives. Follow our live coverage and check the description for source links and verified updates, what happened and what is verified so far. Open-source reports and state media accounts indicate explosions and air raid alerts in Tehran, Isfahan, Karaj, and Kermanshah. Iranian state outlets have confirmed hits on installations they identify as parts of the Ministry of Defense, elements associated with intelligence operations, and facilities linked to the Atomic Energy Organization. Some regional outlets point to activity around the Parchin military complex. These location and target claims come from a mix of official Iranian statements, regional press, and social media footage. Several items remain unverified by independent imagery analysts at this stage. On the U.S. and coalition side, naval and air power were clearly in play. Public tracking of U.S. carrier groups shows the Lincoln and Ford strike groups operating within the region. U.S. Fifth Fleet activity in the Gulf has increased, and regional bases and maritime assets were reportedly used to project strike capability. Iranian statements and external reporting also indicate missile volleys in response, and alerts have been raised across Israeli airspace. I will repeat what is essential here. Confirmed means released by an official source or independently verified. Reported or alleged means coming from state media, social posts, or outlets that still require corroboration. We will flag those distinctions throughout. Official messaging from Washington and Jerusalem. In a short video released by the U.S. President, the operation was described as major combat operations, intended to neutralize threats stemming from Iran's strategic programs and leadership networks. The U.S. message included an appeal to Iranian security personnel to stand down and accept offers of immunity if they surrendered rather than resist, language framed as a way to limit bloodshed and encourage defections. Israel's prime minister framed the strikes as necessary to remove an existential threat to the region and emphasized that the operation targets the regime's ability to project power. He also publicly addressed Iran's internal ethnic communities, urging them to consider their leverage in the days ahead. Both statements are political in tone. They combine military objectives with messaging aimed at encouraging internal splits inside Iran. A Persian-language exhortation circulated online urging Iranians to prepare for a post-regime transition has been shared widely. The text appears to call for organized civic action, but its author remains undefined in available reports, so its provenance is unconfirmed. Iran's immediate response and the battlefield picture. Iranian state media reports ballistic missile launches directed at facilities they said were tied to U.S. forces and Israeli targets. Air defenses were activated over major cities, and several Western countries reported receiving alerts about missile activity. Tel Aviv and other urban centers reported sirens and air raid warnings. Several airlines temporarily closed routes, and some civilian airspace was restricted. There are also reports, as yet unverified, of incidents near Bahrain's naval facilities where the U.S. Fifth Fleet operates. At this writing, there are no independently corroborated tallies of casualties or confirmed senior leadership fatalities. Iranian authorities have said they moved certain senior figures to secure locations. Those claims suggest precautionary measures rather than confirmed leadership losses. Social media videos purporting to show strikes or damage are circulating. Each must be treated cautiously until geolocation and timestamping confirm authenticity. 3 core takeaways. 1. Scale and stated ambition. This operation is materially and rhetorically larger than most recent limited strikes. The combination of carrier strike groups, regional basing, and targeted messaging aimed at regime removal indicates a strategic objective beyond short-term deterrence. Historical parallels, including public rhetoric used before the 2003 Iraq campaign, are instructive. Political leaders often pair kinetic action with messaging designed to influence internal actors. 2. The limits of air and naval power for regime change. Kinetic strikes can degrade command and control, infrastructure, and weapon systems. But history shows that air power alone rarely produces political collapse. For a regime to fall quickly, internal fissures are decisive. Significant defections from security forces, coordinated civilian uprisings with leadership and organization, or a breakdown in elite cohesion. Without such internal dynamics, even intense strikes tend to produce attrition, not immediate political replacement. 3. Iran's credible retaliation options and escalation risk. Tehran retains missiles, drone capabilities, and proxy networks across the region. It can threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, launch asymmetric attacks through militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, and strike at partner assets overseas. The risk in the coming 48-72 hours is that retaliation will broaden geographically and temporally, producing a cycle of tit-for-tat strikes and proxy escalation rather than a rapid resolution. Scenarios to consider and what to watch next. There are 3 plausible trajectories from here. Rapid collapse. This requires visible and credible signs of internal elite collapse. Mass defections within the IRGC or regular army, senior officials publicly abandoning the regime, or sustained organized mass protests that seize administrative centers. Indicators to watch: confirmed IRGC defections or public statements by senior commanders, video and independent verification of organized mass protests in multiple cities, reliable reports of the supreme leader or top clerical figures losing institutional control. Protracted stalemate and attrition. Strikes continue intermittently, Iran retaliates asymmetrically, and neither side achieves decisive political outcomes. Indicators: repeated strikes on limited military targets without follow-on popular mobilization, disruption to energy shipments but no collapse of governance, sanctions, diplomatic isolations intensify without immediate governmental change. Broader regional escalation. Iran expands retaliation, drawing in allied states and non-state actors, threatening major shipping lanes, and pulling outside actors deeper in. Indicators: strikes on international commercial shipping or petroleum infrastructure, coordinated actions by Iran's proxy networks against U.S. partners or allies, formal requests from other states for broader military involvement, marked spikes in oil prices and rapid displacement of civilians across borders. Concrete signs to monitor in the immediate term. A checklist. 1. Verified defections or public statements by senior IRGC or armed forces commanders. 2. Independent confirmation of the supreme leader's status and any major relocations. 3. Credible, corroborated casualty reports from neutral monitors or satellite imagery. 4. Attacks on international shipping, harassment in the Strait of Hormuz, or damage to energy infrastructure. 5. Expansion of strikes beyond national borders or clear routing of proxy attacks against third-party states. 6. Significant statements or troop movements by regional actors or NATO partners indicating escalation. 7. Observable refugee flows or humanitarian crisis indicators at border crossings, humanitarian, legal, and regional consequences. A campaign framed around regime change brings acute humanitarian risks. Strikes near population centers raise the possibility of civilian harm and displacement. International humanitarian law requires distinction and proportionality, and those principles matter when evaluating both legality and moral legitimacy. Disruption to oil markets and shipping lanes would have global economic effects, and neighboring states could face refugee inflows and security spillovers. Humanitarian corridors, neutral monitoring, and independent casualty verification will be vital if the situation deteriorates. Sober assessment. Is this the end of Tehran? The operation's public framing is explicit. Leaders in Washington and Jerusalem present an action aimed at degrading Iran's strategic capabilities and opening space for political change. That said, the question in the title, "Is this the end of Tehran?" is not answerable in absolutes at this stage. A decisive end to the regime would require political fracture inside Iran, beyond what external strikes alone can guarantee. It is possible, but far from certain. The most likely near-term outcomes are a period of intensified military exchanges and political pressure, with the potential for wider regional escalation, unless rapid political shifts occur internally within Iran. What we will monitor next. We will be watching verified defection reports, independent casualty assessments, evidence of leadership displacement, strikes on international shipping and the Strait of Hormuz, and any expansion of Allied military involvement. We will also track humanitarian indicators, displacement patterns, hospital capacity reports in affected cities, and statements from international relief organizations. Final note and where to follow updates. This is a fast-moving crisis with many unverified reports circulating. Responsible coverage requires patience, corroboration, and clear separation between confirmed facts and emerging claims. Subscribe and enable notifications to follow our live reporting and analysis. Check the description for source links to official statements, independent analysts, and satellite image providers. Please keep the conversation respectful in the comments. Facts matter more than speculation as events continue to unfold.